into the halls and find the rest of the people to get them back in. Hope you found the competition and the exhibition area exciting as we do. So for our first panel sessions for the Congress, we would like to invite our old friend Chris Kotke back on stage. Chris heads up the Worldchefs Feed the Planet Committee, of which he is the chairman. He has also been the chairman for many years, aging gracefully like me in his position. And then I will allow Chris to introduce himself and also introduce his panel of distinguished speakers. Without further ado, Chris, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chris. Thanks, Mike.
Good morning. Am I mic'd? Yes, I am. How is everyone today? Thank you all for being here on time. Text all of your friends right now, WhatsApp all of them and say, where are you? Because you're about to miss an amazing panel. With that, I'd like to introduce the people who will be speaking to you this morning, all of whom I am just honored to have on stage with me. So let's begin with here from the Emirati government, Ahmed Saeed Salam Al-Kabi, come on up, who is Food Control Section Manager, Countryside ADA FSA. Dr. Brent Loken, Global Food Lead Scientist. Could you sit right over here? Sorry. For the, from WWF. Familiar face to many of us in the Feed the Planet Committee. Victoria Rose. Victoria. Open Innovation Leader, Electrolux Professional. Dan Truss. Dan Truss, founder and director of The Chef's Eye. And just because a panel is really cool, but for chefs it's also neat to watch something happening in the kitchen, Chef Henry Huadanier. I said that so wrong, and he's going to correct me on that. So before Chef gets cooking, I just want to cue a really short video. Lynn, if we could bring up that video, and then we'll begin.
ولا يمكننا العيش بدونه. هنالك متعة في تحضير الطعام ومشاركته وتناوله. لكن الطريقة التي ننتج ونستهلك بها غذائنا في الوقت الحالي يصعب التعايش معها وتسبب تغيرات جذرية في العالم من حولنا. التحديات التي نواجهها هي فقدان التنوع البيولوجي، تغير المناخ، هدر الطعام، البدانة، وظهور التهديدات الصحية. حان الوقت الآن لاختيار أنظمة غذائية صحية ومستدامة، ليس فقط من أجل صحتنا الشخصية وصحة أحبائنا، ولكن من أجل صحة كوكبنا. في دولة الإمارات تكاتفنا جميعاً كقادة للتغيير لإعادة تشكيل النظام الغذائي، لننتج ونتناول الطعام بطريقة أفضل. لدينا القدرة على إحداث تغيير مؤثر من خلال الخيارات التي نتخذها، لأن الطريقة التي نختار بها غذائنا هي الطريقة التي نختار بها الحياة. الغذاء من أجل الحياة، نربط الناس بالغذاء والكوكب من أجل مستقبل مستدام.
Wonderful, thank you, Lynn. So we are going to begin. So when I was growing up, we had a thing called a three-ring circus, which is a circus that happens in three rings and three things are happening at once. We're going to do a two-ring circus for you this morning. Maybe not a circus, hopefully not. But we have Chef, and pronounce your last name for me.
Guadagni.
There you go. Got it? Okay, I didn't do it very well. So Chef is going to be cooking some food that's going to demonstrate zero waste. And do you have a mic up here or not? I'm going to grab one mic here real quick. There we go. So Chef, just real quickly, tell us briefly about zero waste and what you're going to be making.
So today, you hear me? Yeah. So today I will cook 3 dishes. made with all ingredients that normally has to go to the rubbish. So I cook something with carrots that when becomes soggy, nobody wants to eat. Eggplant and bananas. Nobody wants to eat brown bananas, but nobody knows that is the best period to eat bananas in that case. So I did some few preparation you will discover later. And I did a banana bread linked to foie gras. So doing something with an ingredient that you usually waste, linked to something that is really gourmet.
So translated, cooking with stuff that goes to rubbish can be pretty amazing.
Yes.
And they're all going to get to taste this in a little bit. So I hope panelists, you're up for a little banana and foie gras this morning. Excellent. So Chef, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it from here.
Thank you.
And I don't think I introduced you properly because you're corporate chef with Electrolux Professional. Chef, it's all yours. Good luck. I'll check in a little bit. I'm going to hand you this mic. And then each of you has a microphone. Please, if you would grab it. And we're going to go ahead and begin our panel discussion. I'll be checking in with our chef periodically, and then we'll wind up with him a little bit later on. So the name of this session is Setting the Course. It's looking at some of the bigger picture items, if you will, around sustainability. It's asking ourselves the question, why? We heard some pretty compelling things earlier from Her Excellency this morning, which was amazing. And it's amazing to me that at Worldchefs we take the time to think about sustainability in concrete ways. So this is a two-part thing, so please listen to this, and then we're going to have a second panel. This is going to ask the question, why? How do we set the course? And then later we're going to look at how chefs are changing the course. So with that, let's begin. Brent, I want to ask you a quick question, and that is, we saw that beautiful video, can you level set for all of us? How are we doing today? How are we doing in terms of sustainability? What's the state of the planet? Are we on track to meet the goals that the UN has laid out for all of us?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to everybody for being invited to this very important summit. You know, and before I answer that question, I just want to say that this might be the most important Congress that you've probably ever held. And it's great that we can all be together after so long being in lockdown and not being able to travel. But I also just want to underscore the fact of just how important this Congress is. You know, and if you ask yourself, why is he saying that? I mean, just a recent scan of the headlines will really tell you why. You know, the heat wave that we saw in India and Pakistan with temperatures reaching nearly 50 degrees Celsius, completely testing the limits of human survivability. Western wildfires in the US, which is setting records yet again, earlier and earlier every single year. In Antarctica in March, they saw temperatures 70 degrees Celsius above normal, completely shattering what scientists thought was actually possible there. So clearly all these headlines are painting a picture of a planet that's in crisis, a planet that's in trouble. So to answer the first part of your question, things aren't going very well. The state of the planet, I think, and if we look at the current war and the food crisis that things are pretty dire. The good news, though, is that it's not too late. We still have time to act, but we don't have a lot of time. The time is necessarily running out. Now, the next 5 to 10 years are probably the most important years for our species, because it's within the next 5 to 10 years that we have to really set the course of action to come. So if there's ever a time to act, the time to act is now. And this is a wonderful thing about food, and this is where you guys come in. And this is why this event and this Congress is so absolutely important, because we're talking about food, and we're talking about the sustainability and the health of food. We know that food is one of the key drivers of environmental degradation that we're seeing now, but it's also one of the greatest solutions. And as chefs, each one of you has that power to be able to create every single one of those solutions. And it needs each one of us to take that global movement and to create that bottom-up movement that we need to push all the politicians to actually take action. So no, we're not on course to meet the goals, and we won't be unless we need each one of us here in this room stepping up to take action. So thank you.
So quick follow-up to that, and you know, this is something we've spoken about before. You know, what's needed? Is it top-down, big policy decisions by people in government? Or is it bottom-up for people like, well, individuals, small businesses, restaurants? What's needed right now?
Both. We need the top-down politicians, like what's happening here within the UAE, to be able to create the policies. And we can't underscore the uniqueness and importance of seeing the Minister of the Environment up here on stage talking about food and food systems and health and sustainability. That doesn't happen very often. So we need that to kind of set that global framework. But we also need that bottom up to push the politicians. So it's this like harmonization between the top down and bottom up. And it's the chefs. It's the chefs that are the influencers that can step in and create that bottom up movement. So it's wonderful and an honor to be here with some of the key influencers on the planet to be able to create that bottom up.
It's the power of the white jacket.
Absolutely.
Yes, we have power. So let me turn it to the UAE for a second. So Ahmed, your role as food control section manager, what is the key focus for you in the ADSFA on issues of food security, food sustainability that you're looking at right now?
Thank you, Chris, for the question, and thank you for inviting us here in this Congress. Abu Dhabi Food Control Authority is the authority that's in charge for food safety, food security, agriculture, and biosecurity here in Abu Dhabi. We have worked with many initiatives to improve food security in Abu Dhabi. One of the major is to enhance the local farmers here, supporting them to produce food so that it will help the food that it comes to the market. You know that when the product is here in the market, it will help the food security. Other things that we are working in it is making the food trade from various countries that the food will be available here in the market. We are working also in the food waste and food laws to make it, there's many initiatives to reduce it by 50% by 2030. This will not happen if we are not working together so that this will achieve this goal. We are also working in food safety. Food safety is important that all food, through all the change from the farmer until reach to the customer, and the food industry working together to reduce the food safety, to improve the food safety, sorry.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned food waste because we're going to talk about that with Dan in a minute here. But Victoria, let me sort of jump over to you for a second, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this in terms of where we are today. What do we need? I mean, we talked about bottom up, top down, but if we look at kind of a whole food system approach, is that what we need, or should we be focusing on one specific part of sustainability, like, for instance, food waste? How do you answer that?
Yeah, I would say it's important to start with something, even if it's starting small, and look over the operations, like where can you make a difference? Is it to source more local produce? Is it to increase the plant-based part of your menu? Or is it to see what's being wasted and how you could potentially reduce that by starting to measuring and starting to collect data? The important thing is to start somewhere and to start now and to look over where that could be for you in your setting.
It's that wonderful concept of baby steps that we talk about. Do something, right? So let me ask, just as sort of follow-up to that. In your job, you're looking at trends. You spend a lot of time looking at the environment for trends in sustainability. What are you seeing right now on a macro level? Maybe that could guide us about where we're headed.
Yeah, if we look at how the consumer behavior is shifting, we can see a macro trend that you can call the conscious consumerism, because of course people out there are seeing the headlines that Brent were just mentioning, and they want to do their part. They want to try to reduce their footprint and to take action. And that's also something that's behind what we see with all the alternatives coming up there. We do see alternatives when it comes to meat, when it comes to fish, to seafood, to everything. I mean, we do see everything from mycelium-based alternative to bacon, to egg made from mung beans, to potato milk. And this is a response to this request from the consumers to try to reduce their footprint and to try to reduce the animal-based proteins that are part of their diet. And it's also important here to underline that the majority of these consumers are not vegetarian, they're not vegan, but they want to make some kind of change in their consumer patterns. And they expect also the businesses to take their responsibility and to take action. It's not an option anymore to not do anything, but it's something that the consumers are demanding for.
Chefs, I hope you were listening to that, because there was so much in what she just said, what the customers are asking for, that we in the food manufacturing world and the restaurant world were responding to. And who are those customers? We're going to talk a lot about that in the next panel also. Dan, let me just jump into food waste here, because that's come up a couple times now. You spend your life in food waste.
Yep.
So give us a little bit of the macro view of food waste. Why is it important to look at food waste?
Well, there's probably several reasons to it. So first of all, food and food waste is one of the biggest contributors to CO2 emissions around the world. So obviously that's a very important starting point. But if you look further down the supply chain, what goes into food that then goes into the bin? So obviously you have to grow the food, which needs water, which needs soil, which needs space. You need to transport the food as well. So obviously that's more than what you're just seeing when it goes into the plate at the end of the day. And then really from a chef's point of view, which is kind of what my background is, so that's how we focused on this, it's cost as well. Everything you throw in the bin has a cost. And especially at the moment with kind of unfortunate world events, as the price of food's going up, so is the cost of it as well. So I think it's really important that not only to be sustainable, but to help your business as well. That's why food waste is so important at the moment.
And we heard earlier this morning that a third of all food is wasted. I mean, it's a massive problem.
Yeah, I mean, about 90% of that food is avoidable. So, when we go into kitchens, into restaurants, we see that, about a third of food comes from plate waste, so that's straight from the customer plates. About a third is overproduced, so that's food that goes onto the counter for the buffets that then doesn't get reused and gets thrown away. And then the other third is the trimmings. So obviously what Chef's doing here is brilliant. Looking at, first of all, we like to help train people to reduce the trimmings. But if you've got carrot tops or aubergine tops, such as he's got here, it's great to be able to reuse that as well. So I think, it's becoming more aware of food waste, I think, is the first step. And then from there, we can look at ways of helping people to reduce it down.
Excellent. We're going to come back to you in a little bit and talk about how we do that. Ahmed, let me bring it back to you for a moment here. So we transition a little bit to a how question, but you work in the world of policy and government. How do you get the whole food industry to work with you? Obviously, you have plans. How does that happen from a practical standpoint? How do you get that to work?
Working with is important. We will not achieve our goals without the food service or food industry. They play a major role in our industry to achieve our goals. Let me give you an example for example, food service. They are not using the vegetables or fruits that has been produced here from local farms. This will not help the farmer to sustainable the farm here, especially in the challenge here for the climates and for resources. We don't have the plenty of water, and we have high temperature here. If the farmer produce the vegetable from his farm and he didn't find somebody to take his farm, this will increase the waste or the loss from his farm. And this will not help him to sustain the agriculture here in Abu Dhabi or in UAE. Let me share with you with one our success story or one story that has been done here in Abu Dhabi 3 years before. We have, maybe you heard about Zaid Heritage Vegetable. We did a competition between the chefs that they use the local raw materials from our farms. They have introduced beautiful food with dates and meat. And this competition give you an idea that the important role of the food service or food industry to help the government to implement the food policy. We, as ADEFSA, we have many workshops with the food industry before we put our policy and regulation. We did revise every time, from time to time, our regulations so that it help them to implement and to achieve our goals, and it will be practical and they can implement it.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'd say as well, so I live here in the UAE, and I have to say that the government here have been brilliant with, communicating with like experts in certain fields, the public sector, and with the industry as well. There's a lot of awareness here about food waste, about sustainability, which I'd like to see more kind of in my own country, back in the UK, that the government took more of an interest. Whereas here, there's been some fantastic things done over the last couple of years that have really kind of focused, the population and the industry on doing the right thing. So yeah, just like to say that.
So I'm gonna take Ahmed's cue about beautiful food, because I did say I would check in with the chef here partway through. Victoria, can I borrow your mic just for a minute? So chef, we still have a little time here before we eat the foie gras, but tell us, how are we doing on the cooking? What's happening over here?
So for the foie gras, I just take the brown bananas, mix them, and then put inside my focaccia dough.
Cool.
Okay. And then I add it to foie gras and a reduction of balsamic vinegar and ginger. The eggplant has been put in the oven, so they were soggy, so nobody wants to eat it. What I do with that? I put them in the oven, 160 degrees for 40 minutes, let's say, then take out the center and mix with chocolate, eggs, and almond.
That's over here.
And the orange one that you see is carrot yogurt. Okay, I did it overnight, so I took all my carrots that were soggy and I steamed them with all the peel, just cutting the bottom and then I put them in milk with adding some yogurt, and I did it overnight. And then this is the result. It's really thick, it's really nice, and has got a really good flavor.
Sweet?
Sweet. I didn't add any kind of sugar.
So all the sweetness came from the carrots themselves? Wow.
And the goat cheese bread that is here is filled with walnuts and rosemary. And is done also with the bananas that were blackened, were mixed into the preparation.
So instead of throwing stuff out, and I hope you can see all these 3 dishes up here, we're going to taste them in a minute, sorry, but he only made 4 portions. But this is the point. The point is, from things that you would throw away, we can create beautiful food. We're going to come back to you in a minute. Can I borrow the mic? All right, so I'm going to jump back to our panel, and I'm going to ask Brent a question about biodiversity, because I know you do a lot of work with biodiversity, and I know that's a topic that's very near and dear to you. Can you just sort of tell us briefly, a little bit, like, we hear a lot about biodiversity. Why is that important? And specifically, why is it important to us, to chefs?
Before I answer your question, I want to talk about baby steps. And I would like to challenge us to say that the days of baby steps are probably over, and that we probably need to take great leaps, and that we should even start, like the language that we use should be about taking great leaps forward, because I think that maybe 10, 15 years ago, we could have taken the small steps, but you know, the next 5 to 10 years are the most important for us, and we really have to make tremendous strides going forward. So I would just like to challenge each one of us here to start thinking of what great steps that we can take. Now, with biodiversity, I spent 5 years in the rainforest of Borneo, and some of my fondest memories were sitting there just hearing and listening and feeling the biodiversity and all the life, you know, that was there. I actually rediscovered a monkey species that they thought was extinct called Miller's grizzled langur, or it's also called the Dracula monkey, if you want to look it up. And all of this biodiversity that we have on the planet stabilizes our planet. I mean, there's a reason that the planet evolved to have so much life on it. You know, the biodiversity of the rainforest stabilized the climate. The biodiversity of the mangroves and like oceans stabilize the oceans. But we're driving that to extinction. And food is the main driver, which is causing the rapid loss of biodiversity that we're actually seeing right now today. So if we fix our food system, we can also be able to stabilize the planet, be able to protect some of this biodiversity. But also when we're thinking about biodiversity, it's also the biodiversity of what's on our plate. You know, and looking at some of the food that we have up here, it's wonderful biodiversity, right? But unfortunately, so much of our food is driven by only like a certain food groups. There's limited food that we're eating and consuming right now, so we're losing that tremendous richness of ancient grains and foods that we could use to be able to eat. And that's something that where chefs can really play a huge role, is rediscovering that biodiversity that we have on our plate. And also by transforming the food that we have, we also get to actually protect the rainforest. So it's actually like a, you know, double win that we have for us. So extremely important.
It's all connected, ultimately.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You know, I love this, Brent, how you're challenging us to think a little differently, because I've always said baby steps, and maybe I need to change that now. So point is well taken.
Yeah, I think we all have to change so much these days that it's even hard for us to understand the tremendous leaps that we have to take. Yep.
So Victoria, last question I asked for you was, yeah, bring it over if they're ready. Let's go. We're going to never wait while the food is hot. Victoria, a little while ago, I asked you kind of a macro question, you know, food systems and all that. But let's dial it back a little bit. What are some of the small steps that we can do? Maybe that aren't baby steps. Maybe they're adolescent steps. How's that? Is that better? But, you know, what are things that we can do from a chef, thank you very much, a chef standpoint to change? What are some of the things that are, you know, from the trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, there are a lot of interesting things going on in the area of food tech, providing new means for the chefs to do this in an effortless way. It should be as easy as possible to do this change. One thing that I do see coming strong is the carbon labeling, for instance, where there's now possible to actually give the carbon footprint for a single dish on the menu. And that's a way to help the final consumer to make a more conscious decision. I'm a big fan of nudging, like when you really try to push in the right direction by providing this kind of information and making it possible for them to make a more sustainable choice. So again, then it's not that you want to oblige someone to do something or you want to shame them. It's a way for them to have the possibility to contribute to a more sustainable development. So that's one thing we do see. I do see coming. Another thing are the smart bins or the smart scales that you can call them, where you use artificial intelligence and image recognition in order to try to get the data of what is being thrown away and where, and then to have that data and to have that information in order to take action.
That's a perfect segue to the question I'm going to ask Dan in a minute. But chefs, did you catch that? As we're writing our menus in the future, what is that going to look like? It could be carbon footprint of each of our ingredients. And that concept of nudging, I think, is really important, because sometimes when you tell people to do things, maybe they're a little less apt to do that. But when you explain why, which is a nudge, your experience is that people change their behavior.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course, now there are these tools with the climate labeling, but even if they're not available in the region where you are yet, you can also, there are small things you could do, like put on the menu this kind of information, or put more plant-based options on the menu. That's also a way of nudging, let's say, because research shows that tend to help people move in the right direction. And there are also studies to show, in order to potentially half deforestation, there was a publication recently in Nature that could be done also with cutting 1/5 of the beef consumption. So coming back to the people that are trying to reduce the animal proteins from their diets, this goes in this direction.
Interesting. Even 1/5 makes a big change. Dan, let's talk a little bit about. Let's go back to food waste for a little bit. What are some innovative ways that we can look at food waste? And you know, the problem that a lot of the people in this room have is chefs busy. How do we do it?
Yeah, well, obviously I'd say to monitor and track your food waste using us, obviously. But I think really to reduce food waste in the first place, you do need to know what the food is that you're wasting. So the most important thing for me is awareness and education. So I think, first of all, starting with young chefs. So I know we've got a few colleges out in the room next door, one of which we know quite well. It's about working with the young chefs to get them to understand, first of all, sustainability, food waste, food cost, all of it. Then the other side of it really is the customers, because I think most chefs don't go to work every day to waste food. They're kind of held to a certain extent by what their customers want. So if we can start raising awareness to everyone else, it's a difficult one, because obviously it's putting the onus onto the customers and they're paying for the food. But if we can get them aware of what they're taking on their plate, what they're throwing away, then it will have a knock-on effect on everything else. So it's not just a chef's problem, it's a societal problem, and it's a cultural problem, really. So it's about trying to change that, a bit like what the other guys have said, really, just get everyone aware of their own, their own food, their own plate, whether it's when they go to a restaurant or stay in a hotel or when they're cooking at home. And from there, it becomes an easier journey, but, for the time being, we just need to know what the waste is. We need to know what food's been thrown away and why it's been thrown away. From there,
And how do we do that?
From monitoring it. So obviously, there's systems such as Chef's Eye which can help to track the waste. But even for, if you don't have the budget or whatever for that, it's just writing it down. I mean, that's how we started this in the first place. So we had our own restaurant, we had a problem with food waste. So we started just writing it down on a piece of paper. And then it becomes quite clear how much you're throwing away and how much it's costing your business. And then from there, you can step it up, you can start to automate it. Then you look at the pattern. So if a lot of food's coming back from customer plates, maybe the plates are too big, or maybe it's the same food coming back. It might be a garnish or a side salad. Then, that's an easy step. Or, when the chefs are quiet and they're doing their mise en place, they're over-prepping, and then that food goes in the bin. So it's just having that information in the first place is definitely the first step. And then I think it's great to see so many people here from the industry as well kind of focusing on this, because I think we need to work together, to look at what we can do to reduce it, because it is a team effort, really. Even if it's competing hotel companies, we're still in the same industry, we're still colleagues. So it's just, opening this dialogue, having, young chefs coming through who are thinking about food waste and what they can do differently is vitally important. And we're seeing more and more of that as well now. So I think, it's definitely moving in the right way, but this is all still very new for chefs.
Ultimately, it's what you're saying is, and what many of you have set up here is, it's about education, right? It's about getting people to understand, and with the understanding, then you can act.
100%.
If you don't know how much waste you're producing and what it is, you can't act.
Yeah, and I think, going back to what was said earlier, I think it does have to come from the top down. I think people, like with recycling now, people recycle without really thinking about it. They put it in their different bins. It should be the same when it comes to reducing. People know how to shop, how to store food, how to cook. That it's really important. And I think, but it needs to be part of. If it's for chefs when they're in college, when they're learning about about food cost or anything else like that. It needs to be part of what they do. And the same thing for people probably when they go to school, to understand, not just food, but other sustainability initiatives as well, because, I mean, it is our planet, it is our world, it's our responsibility, really,
And Brent, you're going to say something.
On the education bit, though, I mean, I think education is extremely important, helping people to understand, but it's not enough, and I think that most people are so busy, they understand it, I think a lot of people get it, but if the enabling environment isn't there, if you can't actually walk into a supermarket and buy healthy foods, education is not going to help you, and if the healthy foods are so expensive that you can't, afford it, or if you don't have access to it, so that's where we really need the top-down government enabling conditions, or if it makes restaurants it's so difficult, that entry point is so hard to be able to get there. That's where we need the leadership from the top down, and it's really that bottom-up, top-down working together, and that's why the chefs need to mobilize that bottom-up movement to push the politicians to create the environment that's in place. And right now, we're not there.
And I think the other thing as well, if you're reducing your waste, whether it's at home or in the restaurant, you're saving money, so it makes sense for people to do it. So they have, people have to understand that that's the case, and I think exactly like Brent says, it's both sides working together.
So, so my esteemed panelists, we're going to have to wrap up pretty quickly, but the chef was really nice enough to bring you all samples. So this is the time of the panel when you get to taste them. So chef said you can use a little spoon or just pick it up and take a bite if you will. And then, Chef, why don't you come over here and just real quickly, grab a bite, have a bite. You guys are so, food afraid. Go, dig in. Chef, just real quickly, tell us one more time what's on the plate here, and a little bit just how you came up with this idea.
So this is foie gras with banana bread. So I use the bananas that normally has to go in the rubbish, and I link it to the foie gras that is a really high gastronomic ingredient. So just for the chef, the moment is now. We have to change the mindset of our client. Zero waste doesn't mean bad food. So we have the possibility, we have the creativity to make new dishes, alternative dishes.
So chefs, the power's in your hands. You've heard it many times from our panelists, from our chef who is cooking. There was the foie gras, was it okay?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Portion a little small, maybe.
Sorry, one of
Go ahead, and then I think we need to wrap up.
Yeah, so I just forgot to say, so the other thing we'll be doing for this Congress is we'll be weighing all of your food waste. So in the restaurant through there, we're going to be weighing all the food that's coming back off the plates, so we can kind of show you guys, what you're doing as well. And so maybe that could be a starting step for what you can do differently, in the future, or to just raise a bit of awareness for you guys as well.
Excellent.
Cool, thank you.
One last one quick, and then I've got to wrap up because I'm getting that look from Andy.
I just want to challenge, once again, everybody here to think about the one thing it is that you can actually commit to at this Congress that will be able to make, transform the food system. And I don't know if you're using hashtags here, but it'd be great if you could start posting that online and saying, this is what I'm going to commit to, and then, go for it.
Okay, before I leave the stage with our panelists, I do want to make a small announcement and show a short video because it's really important. Many of you are aware of the sustainability curriculum that we launched a whole bunch of years ago, and then we started teaching it via the web, etc. And it has, we're going to talk about this on Thursday for the presidents out there, exploded. We have a lot of people who have done it, thousands of professionals who have completed the curriculum, literally thousands. But that's not good enough. We need a much bigger amount of people to be informed to drive change. So, I am very pleased to announce, after a lot of work, that the online version of sustainability education is completed. That means that people, professionals, students all over the world can do this curriculum at their leisure, at their own pace on the World Chef Academy. So this is a huge amount of work. I just want a couple shout-out thank yous to the Electrolux Food Foundation and Custom Culinary for making this happen. Without their support, we couldn't have done it. So, Lynn, are we ready? Cue the video.
My name is Chris Ketke, and I'm the chairman of the Worldchefs Feed the Planet Committee.
And I'm Shona Chalmers. I'm the vice chair of the Feed the Planet Committee, and I'm so excited to have you join us for this unique educational opportunity.
The reason we created this course is because chefs and cooks like you wanted to learn how to cook more sustainably. This course teaches you how to implement change in professional kitchens, and together we can change the world for the better.
In this online course, there are 8 topics, each of which will talk about one specific topic in sustainability. And know that this course is created for chefs, by chefs. We understand the world you live in and the challenges and opportunities of sustainability in the kitchen. Each topic is divided into short modules that include instruction and a chance for you to show what you've learned. It's a lot of fun. I also want to mention that we wrote this course with the help of some amazing sustainability experts. Being recognized as a sustainability champion can really help you in your career.
On behalf of the entire Feed the Planet Committee, we are so happy that you're taking this step to further yourself and taking the time to improve the world. Chefs have the power of the white jacket to change the world.
It's super exciting, so spread the word to everybody and go check it out, please. And with that, I'd like a huge round of applause for our panelists who flew in from all over the world to be here just for you. Thank you.